The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff, in stock at CoolStuffInc.com. The Dice Tower, episode 550.
Mathity math.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Geoff asks why we don't have many characters in board gaming, to which we respond with Stephen Buonocore, asking him about the state of the industry and how he deals with so many games on his schedule. Plus, we have more questions from the mailbag and the voicemail, a tale of board gaming horror, and we begin our new educational series with our top 10 games that teach math. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the Archimedes to my Pythagoras, Tom Vassell.
I highly disagree with you.
Really?
I want to be Pythagoras. I'm sorry. The Pythagorean theorem. I love it. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I love it. Back off,
you know what?
Pythagoras guy.
I probably should have saved Archimedes for Suzanne anyway, because Archimedes is a big fan of pi. Math joke.
No.
Math joke.
Pythagoras, no. Back off. Okay,
Math
folks.
joke.
Welcome to the Dice Tower. A show about board games and the people who play them. I'm your host, Tom Vassell.
Hi there, I'm Eric Summerer, the troublemaker.
You weren't always the troublemaker. I've been going back through Dice Tower history, and it's interesting. You were very polite the first time you came on.
I was extremely nervous when I first started. You know, I didn't know what the boundaries were. I wasn't sure how much I could push. I feel a little more comfortable now. I think because you can't get rid of me. I'm too ingrained, and like it would be a crazy amount of work if I left.
We're just doing a tiny bit of reminiscing here, folks, because it is episode 550, which is it just seems like we just did episode 500.
It really does.
Big deal about it.
It was a year ago, right? Or just a little more than a year ago at the Gamma Trade Show when we got everybody together and did the big reminiscence and everything. So yeah, it's been a year. By gum.
Yeah, so that's interesting, and I think though, hopefully that at this point in time, anyone realized that anybody who comes on the show can give me garbage. I think
we've all learned that. Yes.
I don't think anyone has ever, like on air, pushed me to a point that I was not comfortable with. It probably has happened, but I can't remember it happening.
No, if it has, I've edited out, both from my memory and from the show itself.
Yeah, well, you know, it's good, and we're glad to be here, and we're glad to be doing the show, and so much has changed. If you're wondering how the show has changed, I have done a History of the Dice Tower video series. I've done 4 of them so far, and if you're hearing this, next week you should see at least a few more in that series. It's taking me much longer. And the reason this is all in my mind is because today I was putting together the one where Eric joined the podcast.
Oh, boy.
Well, not where he joined, because he joined much earlier than that.
That's true. I was doing a lot of other stuff first.
Right. But were you surprised that I asked you, or were you expecting me to ask you to be on the show?
Oh, I don't think I was expecting you to ask me. I was surprised when you sent the email. I mean, it made sense. I think I was the most involved with the show. Once Sam was no longer in the picture, and so, yeah, I guess I wasn't totally taken aback, but I really didn't think you'd ask me if I was ready for that.
I didn't really have if this happened today, let's say you left, there would be like dozens and dozens and dozens of people I would consider.
That's true. I mean, it's a much bigger pool of people that are doing things now.
Right, there's just so many people in the industry doing podcasting, or just they're on shows, or I know people from person. But back then, I did not know nearly as many people. I know this is starting to sound negative, actually. Back then, I had no other choice.
Yeah, well, no, I got it. I was there when I needed to be.
All right, well, let's see. Once again, we want to keep reminding you guys that every other week, the weeks that this show is not posted, is Dice Tower Tonight. Actually,
Although you're talking about maybe mixing that up and staggering it.
Yeah, you're right. I just realized why I didn't do it that way, and it has all come back to me. But anyway, if you're wondering what Dice Tower Tonight is, Dice Tower Tonight is a video show that Eric and I do, along with our new co-host, Crystal Pisano.
Speaking of somebody who's willing to jump in if I were to disappear.
If something happens to you, I'll be like, "What did you do, Crystal?" But we had a good time. So playing some games, and you guys can be involved. You get to pick some games that we're going to review. It was very entertaining, I thought, this past Wednesday. So you can watch them after the fact too. But we do them live at 9:00 Eastern Standard Time. So speaking of podcasts and things, we have lots of different podcasts in our network. This is not. The Dice Tower Network is full of all sorts of podcasts, and we talk about a lot of them. There's been several new ones that have joined, and we want to promote these podcasts.
Yes.
One of the new shows that has been added recently is Tabletop Game Talk. That's a weekly podcast that not only talks about games, but covers the topics of the board game hobby in general. Chris, Kitty, and Josh each bring a different viewpoint to the conversation in a fun and easy-to-listen-to format. I've played games with these guys at various conventions. Chris, I hunt him down all the time, or he hunts me down. I met them, I think, playing Sheriff of Nottingham one time at a convention. I remember. They were a bunch of liars, as was I. That's how that game works. But they are so much fun to play games with, and just their knowledge of games is really, really well done. So definitely you want to give that one a listen. And if you're wondering, what are all the shows you have, one of the things you can do on our on our website is you can go to the Dice Tower, and you can then go to, at the top it says Board Game Podcast, and you can click All Podcast Episodes. And what that does is it tells you the podcasts that have been released in the last few days. So, we're recording this on April 4th.
5th.
We're recording this on April 5th. And I'm looking here, and there's 3 podcasts that went up April 4th, 4 that went up on the 3rd, 6 that went up on the 2nd, 5 that went up on the 1st. You're definitely going to get a pile of podcasts. Every day when you drive back and forth, you can learn about this stuff. So, anyway, check them out. Check all these shows out. But now it's time to talk about some games. Let's start with Eric.
Sure. I got to play a quick playing card game from Ruston Hawkinson, who did Nations, as well as the new one, Tribes, that we just mentioned on Dice Tower Tonight. He and another one of his relatives, I'm not sure if it's a son or another relative, helped design this one. It's called Dungeon Rush, and it is a speed dungeon crawl. You have 2 adventurers, one for your left hand and one for your right hand, and they have various stats to start the game. And there's 3 levels of the dungeon. You'll work your way. I think it's 3 encounters in level 1, then 3 for level 2, 3 for level 3, something like that. And each player gets a card face down, and then you simultaneously flip them all up, and you are going to slap. You have 1 card for each hand, actually. You turn them all up, and you can slap ones that your character can defeat. So your one left-hand guy may be really strong in thievery, and have 2 thief masks and 1 sword. And if that's enough to defeat a particular monster, you slap that monster. And if you're the first one to slap it, you've claimed that creature. You can also team up. You're both hands on one guy. Boom. If then once everyone's slapped a monster, you evaluate. Were you correct? Did you actually defeat the monster? And then you either acquire or get them as negative points if you mess up. And if you get them as positive points, as a victory, you add some symbols to your card. Now, you've gotten stronger in a particular stat. You can be really good at thievery or really good in melee combat, or you can try and even yourself out in one particular thing. And this continues for several rounds, and you're defeating tougher and tougher beasts, and eventually at the end, you have a couple of boss characters, a dragon and a boss, that have pretty significant stats. But if you've managed to acquire enough stats to defeat them, you can gain some additional bonus points, total it up, see who wins. It's that simple, and it plays in about 10-15 minutes. It can get a little silly, and if you if you lose out on a couple of rounds, you make a couple of mistakes, or you just don't have the stats you need to defeat whoever comes up, you can really get hosed a little bit, because it's certainly a steamroll, a rolling boulder sort of thing. You keep getting stronger and stronger as you have victories. So it can be a little frustrating if you get left behind, but because it's so quick, it's not really that painful, and it's very easy to just deal it back up again and try again, which is exactly what we did. It's a fun game and a terrific filler-weight, lightweight, speedy dungeon crawl. Dungeon Rush, we enjoyed it.
Yeah, I like this one. It's kind of a slappy game.
Well, it is slappy, yes.
Well, that's like a whole genre. I think someday we're going to do top 10 slapping games. Because there's enough of them out there.
Okay.
But not for a while. You have time.
I will start early.
I'm going to talk about a game that I've talked about before.
Yes.
And this is Oh My Goods from Alexander Pfister, and I still hate the name of this game. But when I first played Oh My Goods, I was not a fan of it. I did not like the game. I tried it out, played it. It's like, played it some more, and It just felt, in this game, it's a card. The whole game is made of cards, and you have these buildings, and these buildings you're going to be producing resources, and you're using these resources to build other buildings and get points, get money basically to buy other buildings. And there are small buildings, and then there are big buildings. My biggest problem with the game was these big buildings, you could build them, but you never really got to use them. Whoever built a bunch of small buildings first won the game every single time. And I felt like the game was close to broken. Now, when I played this, I didn't even know who Alexander Pfister was. Since he's a pretty big name designer since then. But when I did the review, he posted a response basically saying something along the lines of, well, that was the first edition rules. The second edition rules have changed that. And my thoughts were, too bad.
You had your chance.
Well, really, that's how I usually am towards games. This happens a lot. They're like, oh, we're going to fix the game. I'm like, you know what? I don't have time to go back and replay the games. I don't normally give games a second chance. But because his trajectory as a designer has gone so high, and people keep talking about Oh My Goods all the time, I'm like, really? Some rules changes made that big of a difference? I went back and played it, and they did. Which is good, because I liked the idea of Oh My Goods a lot. Now that I played it, I'm really thrilled with it, because in this game, the one of the rules he fixed was at the beginning of each round, you can basically discard as many cards from your hand and draw new ones, which helps you find the cards that make your engine work. And that one change alone helps out a lot. There's several changes that he's made, but being able to discard cards and draw the ones that you need really keeps the game flowing, and also the final round. There's just a few changes he made, and it makes the game into what I would want it to be. And now I got a couple expansions that I'm kind of eager to try out for Oh My Goods, and I think I'm going to actually hang on to the game, which is a pretty strong swing around. But if you like engine building games where cards can be used for multiple things, in this game they're both buildings and goods, then this is one that you definitely are going to want to check out. That's Oh My Goods, but get the second edition. However, hunt it down quickly, because it's a Mayfair game, and I do not know if Asmodee is going to be reprinting it or not.
That's true. I talked about this several episodes back when I had a chance to play it, and I then went out and hunted down a copy, which unfortunately was the first edition, but you can download the second edition rules. You can find them somewhere, and it works just fine with
They're
with
really
that
easy to find,
set.
or if nothing else, go find my review of it, and he lists the changes as his response.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's a good idea. And then I also, at Essen this past October, I went and hunted down the two expansions that you just mentioned, which involve like a story-based campaign that I was fascinated with. I have yet to play them, but they sounded really cool. So I'm excited to try those out. And now with your enthusiastic review, I have another reason to do it again. Next up for me is a game called Saykatsu. It's published by IDW Games. It's a co-design from Matt Loomis and Isaac Shalev. I'm friends with Isaac. We've met up at ConCon several times, and I was there at the convention. He said, Eric, I want you to play Seikatsu. I've got a copy. And I was like, oh, sure. How long does it take? He's like, 15, 20 minutes. I'm like, really? You sure? Because I've heard that before. No, it's a 15, 20-minute abstract game. about creating fish and bird gardens. You've got these nice, they're I forget what it's called, urea tiles? I think that's what they're made from. They're these nice chunky tiles, almost poker chips, but a little lighter than that. And you've got this basically a hex board, but they're actually circles. These circular tiles that have birds on them and rings of flowers on them. And you'll draw these things from a bag. You've got a hand of a few of them. And you are first placing them on the board. And you'll get points for placing the birds next to like-colored birds. That's pretty simple. And the larger group you place them adjacent to, the more points you'll earn. But you are also looking at these rings of flowers and trying to get sets of the flowers on your side of the board. We were playing a 3-player game. Each of us had one sort of corner of the board. And at the end of the game, once all the tiles have been placed, you're going to look at all of the rows and you're trying to get the largest grouping of like-colored flowers. And you'll earn big points that way and see who manages to win. And that's it. You lay them all out and then you do a final scoring and the game is over. Very simple, very elegant. I could see pulling this out with lots of different folks. It's one that's simple to explain. I mean, rules took 30 seconds, basically. But it has some of that depth as you try and figure out what you want to do, how not to set up your opponents, watching what they're doing, what they're trying to build, how to mess with them, but still earn yourself points. Do I go for quick points now or save up for points later? It's not a bad game. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's called Seikatsu, Seikatsu, from IDW. Thumbs up.
So if you had to choose 2 or 3 players.
Ooh. I liked 3. I haven't played it with 2, but I did like it with 3, with having to worry about 2 different directions that people are building off of as opposed to just one.
Yeah, I think it works well with both, actually, though. I was very, very impressed with that. This is such a pretty game, Seikatsu.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay, the last game I'm going to talk about is called Steamrollers. Now, I actually got Steamrollers at Essen, I believe, in 2016.
Wow.
And the box was so ugly that I never opened it. And so Jason came and said, I want to review this. And I was like, go for it. And then promptly forgot about it. I know this because the new version is coming out from Stronghold Games in conjunction with the Flatline Games, the original publisher. And I was like, this game looks really fun. Jason, do you want to try it? He's like, I've already played it and reviewed it. I said, I knew that.
Yes.
But I was attracted to this game because it's a roll and write game that is a train game. So there's a board in the middle of the table with some cities on that board that have cubes in them, and you're trying to transport those cubes to a city of the color that cube belongs to.
Okay.
And you do this, each person has a sheet of paper that has the same map on it, and you're going to roll dice each turn, and when it's your turn, you're going to take one of those dice, and that lets you draw a track that's in that section of the map. The section split up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or you can use it to take a special ability next to the board that lets you, give you some special things. Or you can increase your train engine strength because to transport a cube, your train needs to be strong enough to transport it so many links from city to city.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it. There's also a track die that's rolled, and that's the shapes of tracks that you can roll. And it's not a complex game. It ends fairly quickly, but it feels like Age of Steam condensed down into a much faster one. Age of Steam is a much more complex game that was made into Railways of the World and Steam. There's a lot of games that have this transporting cubes. Here's the deal, folks. I'd rather play this. It's so much faster, and it gives me the same feeling.
Really?
I know that's kind of like anathema to Age of Steam players, but why should I spend 2.5 hours playing a game when this 30-minute one hits the spot for me?
Huh.
And you could make it more complex. They have these medium and hard boards where you basically just draw mountains in certain areas, which you're then going to have to go around these mountains and things. There's interaction, of course, because people are drafting the die that you want it. Why are you taking that 4, Eric? And there's these special ability tiles that give you, like maybe it will let you turn a die into anything you want, or it lets you draft 2 dice once, or you can draw any shaped track no matter what is shown on the die. But if someone can take these special tiles away from you, and they're also worth positive or negative points at the end of the game. you each also can start with a special benefit at the beginning of the game, so you're starting slightly asymmetrical. Very enjoyable. I'm hanging on to my copy. I like it a lot. That's Steamrollers.
So, Tom, you'd say you're a character, right?
Yes, everyone says that.
Yeah. Well, Geoff's here to talk about other characters in board games.
3, 2, 1, go.
It's time for Game Tech with Geoff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
Name a character from a video game. Actually, go ahead and name as many as you can think of. I'll wait a second. Now, I can come up with a bunch. Mario, Donkey Kong, Master Chief, Lara Croft, Pac-Man, Floyd the Robot, Pikachu, Rainer Kerrigan, Diablo. Honestly, I could go on for a while, and I'm sure you probably could as well, even if you don't play a lot of video games. Now, name characters from a book or movies. Probably no issues there either. Now, name a character from a board game that started in a board game. I've been asking this question to my board gaming friends over the last few months, and almost everyone comes up blank. After a few minutes, they usually come up with Uncle Pennybags from Monopoly or Colonel Mustard and the Clue Crew, but that's about it. Now, I started thinking about this because I was looking at starting a business to market board game tie-in jewelry, figures, and other merchandise, but once you get past the meeple, it's pretty slim pickings in board games. Now, this has been a huge source of revenue for Nintendo and other companies over the years, but why hasn't it happened in board games? Why don't we have iconic characters like video games, TV, movies, and books have? Other types of media have spawned culture-defining characters. Why not us? Can you even name one character from Descent or Mice and Mystics? I cannot. Now, this topic came up in episode 171 of Ludology with guest Jeff Kanata, and we threw out some theories, but I wanted to dissect it a little bit more here. Now, one explanation I've heard is that those characters have stories and narrative. That makes them seem more real and more relatable, and they stick in our memories and take on iconic status. Board games typically don't do this. If there is a narrative, it's the players that are experiencing that narrative. You don't become a character like you become Lara Croft in Tomb Raider. We have plenty of games that cast you in a role like hers, adventuring through caverns, but you don't become the central character in the same way. In fact, board games are taking the lead from role-playing games and moving further away from the character existing outside the player. For example, in Pandemic Legacy, which does strive for a real narrative, you name your own characters. They just have generic designators like the medic or the dispatcher or, and gee, this one really gets you involved in the character, the generalist. And single-player video games tend to be better at identifying the player with a strong central character. If there are 4 players, they can't all be the lead, and so the stories tend to be more diffuse. But honestly, I don't think story is the real underlying reason here. Counter-argument number 1, Pac-Man. Pac-Man has no story. He got a little bit of story in Ms. Pac-Man, but that came out way after he was already a cultural icon. Yet he was huge from both a game and an IP standpoint. Those of you too young to remember the 80s have no idea how pervasive Pac-Man fever was. The big board game-related popular cultural artifact from the 80s was probably Trivial Pursuit, and the big sellable IP there outside the game was maybe those little pie wedges. And even Mario in his first games really didn't have a story, at least not one that people remember from Super Mario or even Donkey Kong going way back. Another theory, perhaps a bit related to the narrative idea, is the idea of distance. There needs to be some distance between the player and their avatar to develop that attachment that kind of locks a character into our mind as a separate being. They need to become almost like a pet in a way. That's why typically people don't identify as much with their character in a first-person video game shooter, like, say, the main character from Doom, as they do in a third-person game. Now, Gordon Freeman from Half-Life being a notable exception to that role. Now, this may actually help explain why the few characters in board game that have some life outside the games tend to be non-playing characters. Or in a game like Clue, where the characters seem separate from the character that you're playing, since you don't even know if you committed the murder. Dr. Lucky from Kill Dr. Lucky, while not a great game, is an example of a character that seems to exist beyond the players in the game. As he wanders around the house in a doddering way, the players can ascribe characteristics to him. Now, I'm still not totally convinced this is the explanation, though. Maybe we're thinking too hard. Maybe it's as simple as repetition. In video games, very frequently the name of the character is said over and over again by other characters, whether it's text or voiceover or whatever. You don't have that in a board game, except, again, in Clue. In Clue, you say the name of the characters every single turn. Otherwise, your character name is rarely said, and books obviously don't have this problem. Or maybe it's the visual representation. In board games, characters are very abstractly represented, pawns or meeples, and even if they have an elaborate character portrait or mini, it's just one piece of art and that's it. You don't see the character the entire game in different situations and poses that makes them the constant in a changing environment like a video game. Or another simple idea, maybe it's just the animation of a character. If Pac-Man was just a static yellow circle with a wedge missing, would he have become iconic? It's the motion, the opening and closing of his mouth that gives him life, and we don't have that motion in board games. So, in the end, after thinking about this for 2 months, I'm still not sure. It's probably all of this and some things I have not thought of, but I do think it's important for the next level of board games. If some company can have board game characters escape the boundaries of the box and become a real IP, that could be a game changer for that company and for the industry. Miniature companies like Games Workshop and Privateer Press have worked hard to give their characters life beyond the game, but they do it through media outside the game, books and stories and source books or magazines. So, what do you think? Why hasn't this happened? Is it possible for it to happen? And is it desirable? This is Geoff Engelstein with Game Tech.
Now, this is a rare thing on our show.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to highly disagree with Geoff on some of his premise here.
Okay, I've got a little bit of a bone to pick with him, too.
Oh, listen. Then I'm on the right side. Good. Here's the thing. If you are a fan of any of these games, like Geoff kind of blew off several of these games, but if you're a fan of that game, then those characters mean something to you.
Mice and Mystics.
And I know this because I have worked with the Halloween Mask Company, and they went to some of these companies that had strong characters. For example, many people know the characters in Summoner Wars very well. The characters in Heroescape. The characters... I would argue that the King of Tokyo monsters are extremely recognizable characters in the board game industry.
Yes. Yep.
And so if you don't play those type of games, sure. And I will agree that they're not like dominating. Like not everyone knows who the king is. You know, not everyone knows who all, Panda Kai or whatever. Or the different mice. I don't even know the Mice and Mystics characters' names.
Prince Colin.
Okay, but that's because I haven't played it as much as you have.
Tilda.
But I do know the characters' names in the sequel.
And Stuffed Fables?
Stuffed Fables, sorry, I don't know. And so I definitely know the Summoner Wars, a lot of those characters, and it depends how invested you are in that property.
Yes.
So there's very few properties that have expanded, and the most famous games in the world don't have characters at all, like Ticket to Ride and Catan. I guess Catan has the robber, but he has no personality.
Right.
Carcassonne and these games, they don't have necessarily characters, but the thematic games that do have characters, the fans of those games, they can get attached to these characters, I think.
Although, also, I think that goes to Jeff's point that's due to repetition. If you're playing these games over and over again, if you've gone through the entire Mice and Mystics campaign, of course you know who Nez and Prince Colin are, because you've spent enough time with them to have formed a bond with those characters.
Yeah, so I think we're going to see more of this as time goes by, especially if the same characters show up in multiple games. And we're starting to see that happen. Some companies have done it like Level 99 uses the same characters in every game, practically.
Yeah.
And there are other companies where we're going to see same characters from this game used in another game. But
Serlin Games did it with a lot of their stuff, too.
Yeah, I just don't know that it's that big of a deal. I don't know, but I think that if a company can figure it out how to have a character as their mascot. I mean, even we're doing that in the Dice Tower, right? We made these little dice guys.
Yeah.
Like these mascots of the Dice Tower, and people like them. Oh, you think they're everywhere? There's going to be even more. I've commissioned 9 new ones. There's going to be a whole crowd. There's going to be a video game based on it someday.
And soon there's going to be a minis game using all of them.
Hey, do you want to know something totally random, Eric?
Yeah, what?
That we're recording this during PAX East. Neither one of us is there.
True.
Do you know the game Drop Mix? Have you played it yet?
I've demoed it. Yes.
They just came out with a new card for it for the classic G.I. Joe cartoon theme song.
It's the theme song, and everybody wants it. I know.
Huh. I don't want it. Yes, I do. I want it, Eric.
I don't have Drop Mix, and I still want it.
Well, that's even more pathetic. All right.
It is. I'm not going to go out of my way to get it, but yes.
Speaking of pathetic.
And now it's time to chat with a gaming luminary to get a new perspective on the state of the hobby.
Okay, folks. Well, now we have another guest who is joining us today. And this is going to be a surprise to some because it's been so long since he's been on our show last. And that is Mr. Stephen Buonocore.
Hello, Tom. And hello, Eric.
Hi there.
Always good to be here with you. Always a pleasure. And Tom, how are you?
That's actually not true.
It is always a pleasure.
Mr. Buonocore, no, I mean that, but you said that you're not on the show very often, but you were on the show last year at our live Gen Con show.
Well, of course I am. I sponsor the show, so shouldn't I be on the show that I sponsor with you? Very sad.
I guess.
No, I'm just saying that you were on it. That's all. Well, anyway, we wanted to talk a little bit about publishing, and I like to talk about these things so people can kind of get a better grasp of kind of a behind the scenes things in the industry. But before we jump into publishing, we got to say that you just moved down here to Florida.
I did. I have taken a permanent residence in Boynton Beach, Florida, which is also considered part of South Florida, where you are. And moving down here has nothing, and I want to repeat that to the audience out there, absolutely nothing to do with being closer to Tom Vassell. In fact, that was the only negative with coming down to Florida, was that I have to now be not only in the same state, but in the same region of that state with Tom Vassell. But no, it's a great...
This does explain that day that in December or January I was sitting there and the sky started, thunder rolled.
It was,
and I felt a chill go up my spine.
It was a dark day in South Florida, but now in all seriousness, it is. I've been saying this to people. My family doesn't particularly like this comment, but it's like the best thing I've ever done in my life was literally to leave the Northeast, and it's horrible weather, and it's really bad, oppressive cost of living, we'll just say that in general, and come here to Florida. It's so much more relaxed. It's 70 to 80 degrees every day. And I mean, that includes the dead of winter. I mean, it never got below, as a high temperature, 58 degrees during the winter here. And I mean, it's just beautiful all the time. And I'm really enjoying it. And Tom, it's amazing I still haven't seen you. I wonder why that is.
That's not on me, sir. I'm going to the meetup.
I know.
But part of the reason that you've done this is because you now are completely. I mean, you were full time before, but you're like now completely full time, and in fact, you've just hired a couple employees.
That's right. So yeah, the departure from the corporate world, as some people know, I was in IT. In the financial services industry for like 35 years, my entire career. That happened in mid-2016. So it's going on 2 years now. At that point, I was no longer tied to New Jersey, New York area. So I had to do many steps, of course, though, to get myself literally out of there, right? You have to get the house ready to sell. You got to sell the house and do all those things. So it took a little while to put all the pieces in place, but really happy to be here now. That transition over to completely full-time publisher instead of having like 2 full-time jobs has been an amazing event for me.
How do you decide when to make that transition from, a single person running things to, taking the leap to hiring employees?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's sort of like in two phases. The first thing, getting off of the corporate job was, the company was making more money than I was making in the corporate world. So that obviously said, why am I killing myself doing both of these? And obviously I can support myself within the company. And then the company continues to do even better and better just over the last, since that point. And now it's like, well, I can't do this anymore all alone. I absolutely need extra people. So I brought on board Bill Bricker, who has been working with me for the longest time anyway, in an almost full time. He was very, very part time in the beginning, and he kept getting more and more work. He is my director of art and marketing for me. He's been in illustrations and graphic design for his entire career, basically, with some marketing background as well during that period of time. So we brought him on board as a full-time person, and also to run all of the back office stuff, all the stuff that I don't want to do, the bookkeeping, the replacements, the customer service. I brought on Pauline Milano. She comes from outside the industry, which is great. That brings a whole nother perspective, on things. And so she's the director of administration, and she also has a strong marketing background from her previous employment and the things she's done in other areas, in other industries. So she's also contributing to the marketing of the company. So between the two of them, there's a great synergy, and things are really, really moving forward for Stronghold Games.
Now, you've been doing this for a while, the company itself. I'm trying to remember, how long's Stronghold been around?
2009, when it was first incorporated, when we first created the company. And the first games came out in 2010, and that was Code 777, you probably remember, as well as Confusion and Survive, which is still one of my biggest selling games.
Well, yes, but we all know what your biggest selling game is at this point. It's Terraforming Mars.
Without a doubt.
So my question is that kind of what a company is looking for? When they, you like, hey, I want to be financially solvent. I want to be a company that can grow and expand. Do you need the game to do that?
A very wise man once said to me, every company is one game away from being a big company. That was Mike Fitzgerald, who is a good friend of yours and Eric's and the show and mine, and a great game designer. And that's what he said to me about 3 years ago, right before, about a year before Terraforming Mars hit. And that is a very, very accurate statement. And if you think about every company that's out there and where they are right now, they leapfrogged from one huge game. Now, again, Survive, I left corporate world and I started doing this, without that big hit. Terraforming was hitting just after that. So I had no idea that it was going to be what it is now. No idea. We had just committed to the print run, basically, when I left the other job. But it has become that game, right? Number 5 on Board Game Geek, and just with fantastic ongoing sales. 2 expansions now, 2 more this year, and more in the future. So the short answer is absolutely every company needs that one game to put their mark on the hobby game world, and from there you can see what happens.
But how many games did you publish before hitting that big hit?
537. No, I haven't. Not quite that many.
That's what I was going to say. You took my joke.
Not quite that many. Lots of games come out and they're one and dones. Some of them one and dones, meaning one print run and then you let it go. Some of them don't do as well as you want, of course. Mm-hmm. Nothing completely didn't sell, of course. That doesn't happen. If you do your homework right, you in the beginning you put games out so that you find where you're going to fit well into the market. And for me, the biggest thing about what Stronghold did was make great relationships with publishers across the world, with other publishers in Europe and in Asia, and our co-publishing partnerships with companies like 2F Spiele and Lauter Pellet and Spielworks, and now Edition Spielwiese. These guys are unbelievable. They did Noria with me and Indian Summer and Cottage Garden, and we're going to be doing more games this year. These companies are doing amazing things, and they're searching me out, which is wonderful. That's a great compliment to me. So I have a great stream of games now year after year that I can rely upon. So that's really helping propel the company as well.
Well, there's something I've always wondered about. So you have this, let's say you work with the company, because you work with a lot of these different companies. I'm not singling out any specific companies. So let's say you work with new company X, and company X has this great game, and you like this game. Then company X brings you this game, and you're like, it's okay. How do you just, when you work with a company, do you basically say, we'll do all your games? How does that work, or can you pick or choose? It seems like it could lead to some problems if not. Again, I don't have any specific example in mind. I'm just saying that when you work with a company, do you usually go by we're going to just publish all your games?
No, you don't start out a relationship like that. Normally, you start a relationship by getting to know each other, going out for a drink, hanging out. No, you do it by doing a game together, and you say let's try this and see how it works, and see how you work with your partners, and getting a feel for if their types of games are going to fit into your catalog over the long term. So with quite a few of the companies, it's you do a game and it may or may not work completely. If it works somewhat, you do it again and you keep working. Some companies are immediate clicks, and it's just absolutely, I want to do every game that you put out because I believe in you and I know exactly what you guys are doing. And that was, without a shadow of doubt, that was the case with 2F Spieler, right? That's Friedman Freese's company. I've been speaking to them for years about doing games, and they were locked in with Rio Grande Games. But Jay Tummelson, who's an icon, of course, in this industry, and almost created, bringing over the hobby games from Europe, Euro games into this market. He's been pulling back a little bit as time goes on, retiring almost, but he's certainly not retired. And he didn't want to continue doing all of their games any longer. And Friedemann is very prolific, as we know. So he wants to do lots of games. So I said, guys, if there's ever an opportunity here, I'm here for you. And then they basically gave me a shot with 504, which was Friedemann's magnum opus, and then said, we did great with that. Do you want to continue? And I'm like, heck yeah, let's just continue doing this. And now we do all of their games. And without a doubt, all of Friedemann games are absolutely worth bringing to market. So I'm very proud to be a strategic partner of theirs.
So what if, when you're working with a European company, what if the game itself doesn't work in the American market? So you have this kind of agreement. So let's say with the 2F Spiel, they have an older game, Landlord, which all the humor in that game doesn't necessarily translate to an American market.
Right. So that's an older game. We actually did take their remaining stock that was hanging out in the United States under a different publisher's brand. We actually took that and put it back out for them as a courtesy to them. So it's going to sell slowly and over time, and that'll be fine. So it's not about grabbing older titles necessarily. It's about grabbing the new modern titles that they're coming out with. Where an older title makes sense, we'll certainly do it. Heck, it's no secret or surprise that I would love to have Power Grid in my catalog, right? It's the only real ongoing title that 2F has right now that's really still being done by Rio Grande, right? Jay is still involved, so he's doing Power Grid and all those expansions. At some point, hopefully, maybe we'll get it under our catalog. So it's not usually the older titles that come over because, as we know in this hobby, it's cult of the new in a lot of ways. So you've got to have something brand new that people want to hook themselves on, and that's what we're doing. We're going to be doing 4 2F titles this year. It was going to be 3. I kind of coerced them to do one more, and it looks like it's going to be 3 or 4 2F titles that'll be coming out between September and the end of the year.
So as a publisher, there's always different trends in the industry. Now, you've worked with 2F, who in some points doesn't actually follow trends. He just kind of makes
He makes them. He really does.
You know?
No, I mean,
so he started this.
That's a really big
Fable thing.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Tom, but that's a really big thing to point out. That Friedemann is, some people don't like Friedemann's games, and he's got a huge fan following as well. And that's a lot of designers that have that kind of thing. But Friedemann's games, if nothing else, he really does something that is, he just takes something to a different level. And that's a really great thing. And in an industry where there's a lot of sameness out there, to be able to be working with someone of that talent who is really trying to innovate things, it's a really great place to be.
But at the same time, there are trends in the industry. I think it seems to me that the number one trend in the board game industry right now, we're seeing games announced about this and games coming out, is the roll and write games where you have sheets of paper. These have been around for a while. It's not like it's a new concept. Yahtzee did this for crying out loud.
Yahtzee is the grandfather of roll and write, I guess, right? It's kind of funny.
But there's a lot of new ones. In fact, one of them, which I talked about earlier on this show, is the Steamrollers.
Thank you.
And Steamrollers is kind of like takes that very complex Age of Steam and puts it down to where you're just writing down on a sheet of paper. Why do you think people are suddenly drawn to this, writing down things? And they're pretty quick games too, usually.
They're usually pretty quick games. They usually taken, as you just said, they usually have taken a very complex concept. I mean, Age of Steam, oh my gosh, that is one of the most complex, grindy kind of systems out there. It's, I call it a death spiral. You start out and you think you're doing well, and you're constantly getting to higher debt and higher debt, and things just go worse and worse for you as the game goes on. But it's pretty genius the way that Martin Wallace put that game together. But it's big and it's complex and it's long. Emphasis on long. So, now you take a game, you take that, train game that has pick up and deliver and economics in it. You take all of that and you distill it down into something where I'm writing my rails down on a sheet of paper and I'm rolling dice to create the dice pool usually. And that's this game. That's the case. That gives you the actions that you can take. It's a very satisfying thing. Dice is certainly a big thing in general. Back from the day when the Euro games, the older Euro games basically eschewed dice. You cannot have dice in games. Horrible thing. Now they're back. They're back in a big way. Not only in American style games, but they're just back, and they're nice tactile things to use in a controlled, randomized way. As long as there's control on that randomization in game design, they become a modern mechanic. And I think replayability in general on a roll and write game is very, very high, higher than in your average other game, because you have this thing in front of you that you're going to manipulate yourself in various ways over time, over different games.
Now, when you started Stronghold Games, you started with the whole idea of reprinting older games. Mm-hmm. That lasted for like 3 games.
Mm-hmm. No, that's not correct. I did many reprints actually, but I did several.
So about 4. So
okay,
but you did switch over, right? Now you're a lot of your games. You do a few originals, but most of your games are partnerships that you're working with overseas. How do you deal with this constant? It seems like every company wants to make these partnerships. It seems like it could be pretty vicious out there with everybody trying to get every game.
I'm getting beaten up on a daily basis with people coming and sniping the games that I would like to get. Which is, listen, and you and I have talked offline about this, that we are all friends. All the publishers out there really are friends in this industry. But hey, but business is business, and sometimes people have to make deals and have to go after things that they really believe in, and all is fair as long as everyone is playing by the same rules. We have established certain relationships and continue to gain new ones. For instance, the relationships with 2F is now going back several years. The relationship with Allowed to Pellet is a little bit younger. The relationship with Artipia goes back a little bit longer. So I'm continuing to grow grow relationships and to make new ones. Some fall out, some come back, some grow, some new ones show up. Yes, it is a little bit of, oh, can I get that before you? But in the end, I've actually, in cases with my friends in the industry, I've actually said, all right, you're going after that game. That's yours. That's your game. You spoke to that guy first, or that designer first. I've done this with Zeb on several occasions. When he was with Z-Man and when he's with WizKids. we have over the years constantly been playing in each other's sandboxes on a lot of things. You know the same people, so you talk to the same people, the same designers and the same publishers. But like when you really have an affection for somebody, you're not going to jump and try to outbid them or something. You let them do it, and I'll just get the next one. That kind of thing, and you make it fair for everybody.
So, flip side of the coin here, you just talked about trying to get the rights to as many games as you're trying to get. But one of the questions we've struggled with here on the show in the past couple weeks or so is how to deal with so many games in the marketplace. How do you, as a company, find that balance between wanting to provide as many titles as possible, but also being able to support all of those titles adequately so that each one is given a chance to succeed?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It is one of the biggest problems in the industry that there's too much content, too many games, and I'm at the forefront of making that problem happen. So
it was just a nice way of saying it's your fault.
Yes,
I was getting to that.
Yes, thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. I see the good cop, bad cop. You all of a sudden you let Tom be a good cop on this one. Okay, I got it. All right.
You think I'm the bad guy? It's really Eric. I've been saying this for years.
That's it. He's the bad guy, even though he comes across nice. Now I get it. I
was just waiting for you to admit it first. Please continue.
It's there is a balancing act to it. We are trying. Everyone is trying to not only get new content, of course, to get new games, but they're trying to build on particular games, right? So with Terraforming, we mentioned it, we go back to it. That's a flagpole title that I can continue building upon, which will now make it possible to easily not do as many titles. I do plan on, most likely, I've been promising myself this for 3 years, do less titles this year than the previous year.
Sure.
I really think I will. I really think I will this year do less titles. It's not something that I can answer like, absolutely, this is the way we're going to do it. When a great game comes to me, and it's really what it comes down to, and I'm doing. And another one of those reasons why I'm doing less of the in-house kind of thing, titles, is that, when a great game is presented to me, from a European publisher, I'm like, oh my God, this is great. This really has a potential to be the next, lightweight, crossover game to bring people, into the hobby. I got to do this one. And, you give that a shot, and maybe maybe it's a one and done, or maybe it's like, wow, look at that worked, and they play a couple of print runs out of it, or maybe it becomes that blockbuster. You have to just try a bunch of things to see if you're going to be able to get that huge one that propels you again to another level. And better answer than that, or better way of doing it, I don't know yet. But I'm going to do less titles this year. I promise, Eric. I'm sorry, man.
Okay.
Incidentally, this is a kind of a theme that I heard from many of the publishers at the Gamma Trade Show was they were saying, we're going to do fewer games and concentrate on those games so that they can put more effort on fewer games in a hobby that's currently saturated with a ton of games. And
absolutely. Everybody is talking. Everybody's talking about that exact thing, and I am trying, not as successfully as I would like to.
So what do you think about that, though? Is that how? Because we've been talking about this a lot in the last few episodes about the glut of games. We talked about it from our perspective. I want to hear what it's like from a publisher's perspective. Have you noticed the glut of games in the industry, and how does that affect you?
Well, yeah, I certainly noticed it. I mean, that was obviously from the answer. I absolutely noticed it. We know about
You're
it.
the cause, I guess, is what we're saying.
No, stop
Thanks
saying
a
I'm
lot,
a cause.
Stephen.
Yeah, obviously, it's Stronghold Games is the cause of the cult of the new. No. There is certainly, it's recognized. We all recognize it. But there's no formula for dealing with it because, just do less games. Well, then somebody else will do that game that I thought was really good. So, it's a push and pull. What you want to do is find them and try to market them better and find a niche for them. And I've taken steps to put in place, better marketing campaigns on true flag, is it the right word? Tentpole? Titles,
yeah.
Tentpole, that's the one I'm talking about. Tentpole titles that I can really, say this is a game that's going to rock your socks, and we're going to do this. I mean, one of the games that we're going to put a lot of emphasis on this year is Paper Tales. I know that some of you guys on the Dice Tower have played it and have really loved it.
I love it.
Good. I'm glad. Thank you. For once, he likes one of my titles. So Paper Tales is a card drafting game. And we've taken a big bet on this, but we're going to be putting a lot of marketing effort into it. You're going to be seeing a lot of stuff in your local game store regarding this that we're doing via the Envoy program and getting boots on the ground to do more demos and doing lots of promos cards for the game and things like that. So we're making inroads into reducing that, one and done type of thing.
Okay, so let's talk about this coming year. We got I hesitate to do this, but we have, I'm sure you got some games coming out. You've shown several off at Gamma. You mentioned Paper Tales, that's coming soon. And we know that there's a small expansion for Terraforming Mars coming soon.
It is.
And there's a large one coming. I believe that has been mentioned.
Yeah, you can mention it too. So yeah, we announced two. Officially announced one and unofficially sort of announced the other one. Prelude is the small expansion. We've kind of been doing it small expansion, big expansion, small expansion, big expansion over the last 4 that we've done. The only 4 that we've done. So the Prelude is going to be a pack of cards that each corporation is going to be able to take a couple of these cards at the beginning of the game and therefore more customize and make unique your corporation in the game. And the effect of it is that you're not only going to be differentiating yourself more, but you're going to be getting sort of some special jumpstart powers to the game. So it will make the game go a little faster too, which you may like or may not like, but not like half the time, but maybe it'll take 20% maybe off the play time of the game, which is probably a good thing for some people, maybe not for others. And then the colonies is going to come later in the year, and that's of the size of Venus Next, which launched at the end of last year. And there you'll be dealing with the colonies that are also being colonized, terraformed across the solar system. You'll be out in Ganymede and other places in the solar system like that. I can continue, Tom. I will continue forever if you would like me to on the new titles we're doing. We're also going to
tell us about the new Fast Forward titles.
Sure. I don't have the titles for Fast Forward. In fact, we haven't announced anything in the Fast Forward series. I saw you mention...
I get confused over what you've announced or not. Sorry.
I saw that you mentioned that in something that you said. Oh, when we talked about that at the Gamma video, which by the way was hilarious. I hope people out there watched our interaction at the Gamma trade show in that video. I thought I had a great time.
It really just goes to show you the levels of maturity among the publishers.
Yes, well,
in our industry.
Tom, it's the levels of fun that we have. Hashtag Tom Vassell doesn't like fun. That's nice. That's the hashtag that's trending. If you look it up right now. Anyway, I
feel like it's not, but okay.
You each have our idea of what trending means. I saw 3 tweets. That's trending. Anyway, by the way, that was for Gold Fever, a phenomenal light push your luck game that Tom hates and I love, and you
Eric
will love it.
Eric actually knows about this game because he saw it in our...
It was on Dice Tower Tonight?
It was the one, remember, I opened that box and had all those gems in it?
Yeah, like a big old box of rocks, right?
Yeah,
Eric,
I have kept this game. It's a rarity that I keep games.
he kept it for the pieces, not for the game. I know. I heard.
You know, I was being super polite there.
Well, I know what you did. But so, Eric, when I send you the game, play it with fun people. Hashtag
I will try. Nice.
Well, play it with me, and I guarantee you will have fun. Anyway,
Okay.
Moving on from that, coming up fairly soon is Kitchen Rush, which I think you guys also like. Do I know that?
Yes.
Tom, I'm pretty sure you like that, right? Yeah.
I've beaten the game. Eric has not.
No, we lost.
Kitchen Rush is a very, very hard cooperative game where basically you're playing Hell's Kitchen, the board game. I guess I'll say it out loud. Why not? But without
With a lot less cursing.
Yeah, without a world famous Michelin starred chef cursing at you while you're cooking the dishes. You gotta cook dishes, you gotta clean dishes, you gotta get ingredients, and you gotta do all this in real time and cooperate with each other. So that's a real fun one with our partners out in Greece, Artipia Games. So that's one of our fun releases. We're bringing back Kanban. It's been out of print for a couple of years. It's one of those ones that was we did 2 print runs on it. And then we said we're going to make some changes to it to make it slightly easier to get into because it's a real heavy Euro. So we made a couple of little changes to the game. And that's coming out in August. And this game that I don't know that I have announced to you yet, it just went out to distribution. We're bringing back Fist of Dragonstones. Do you remember Fist of Dragonstones by Days of Wonder? It was one of their first games ever. The closed fist bidding game, Tom, do you remember?
I really like this one, and I heard that you are like quadrupling the number of characters in it.
We are. It went from 25 to 75, give or take, characters in the game.
Wow.
Yeah, so the replayability of the game is going to go way up. We've made a change to make the game go faster. Sometimes the game was a little slower, so we introduced this new mechanic called the King's Favor in the game. It's going to be called Fist of Dragonstones Tavern Edition. Nothing to do with pubs, don't worry, Tom. What it has to do with is it's set in the Dragon and Flagon universe, artistically and a little thematically, that kind of thing. So you'll see the same group of characters on the cover and on the screens in front of you and stuff like that. I loved this game. This was one of the early games that drew me into the hobby, just as a gamer. So to me, playing this rather unique closed fist bidding system where you're influencing characters that are on cards to then get more power from them to then end up getting the Dragonstones, to me is just a fantastic auctioning game. So very excited about this.
Alrighty, well that seems like a lot of games to talk about. We're actually going to probably, I can't guarantee it, folks, but there's a pretty good chance you'll see Mr. Buonocore show up, and if we do some live streaming from the gathering, I would be hard-pressed to see him not show up on that. So
I may try to avoid you. No, okay, you know me. I'm never shy of the camera, Tom, so...
It's probably going to be Jason doing it anyway, so
Very
that
good.
will work well.
Are you going to be
live?
Are you going to be live streaming like several like hours there? Is that how you're going to do it?
We haven't decided yet. It's probably going to be more off the cuff, but I'm sure Jason will do something. Either way, we appreciate you coming on the show today. We'll see you back here for sure. We know that you're going to be on our Gen Con show.
Can we announce a little bit of information about the Gen Con show? A little bit?
Sure, you can announce it. Go ahead.
Stronghold Games will again sponsor the Dice Tower Live at Gen Con. So I'm very happy to be there, annoying Tom once again, rooting for the Secret Cabal to overtake him, in the ratings and all that kind of good stuff.
Oh, nice. And, of course, if we want more insider knowledge from you and Ignacy Chebicek, you can listen to Board Games Insider, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Wonderful segue. Thank you, Eric, my friend. Board Games Insider, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network, with Ignacy Chebicek and Stephen Buonocore. And we specifically talk about the inside of the industry. We take questions from our guild on Board Game Geek, and we talk about the news of the industry, and of course then what's happening inside Stronghold and with inside Portal Games. That's BoardGamesInsider.com, and of course available at wherever your favorite podcasts are gotten from, iTunes, Stitcher, and all that kind of stuff.
Tom.
Tom.
Yeah, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Have you ever accidentally eaten one of your game pieces?
Do you ever make a fort out of game boxes?
How big can a miniature be before it's not really a miniature? And now, the Dice Tower will authoritatively, definitely, possibly, maybe, answer your questions.
Tom, which way to the game library?
Hi, Tom. Hi, Eric. I must have missed you. Darn it, it's this darn time zones, the whole West Coast, East Coast thing. It's probably pretty late where you are, so I hope I didn't wake you up. But I was watching Dice Tower tonight, and I realized I had to give you a ring and ask you a question because I wanted to get your opinion on something. Eric, you talked about Heldentoffe and how you were playing it with your son and how it seemed like you both really enjoyed it. And, you know, I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son, and we enjoy playing games, mostly, together as well. But, you know, some games that they like, they're a little bit young for me, and I just don't find them interesting necessarily as an adult to play. So I was wondering, what do you think a game needs to be playable by younger gamers, but also be enjoyable and engaging for adults? What are those qualities that these magical kind of crossover games or true family games have that make them work, in your opinion? Or is it even about the game? Is it really just about the flexibility and attitude of the adult gamers when you're playing a kids or family game? You guys are experts on this stuff. What do you think? Anyway, sorry if I woke you up. Thanks so much for listening to this voicemail, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Bye.
I think any good kids game, didn't we just talk about this on Dice Tower tonight? I really feel like we did.
I think we hit on a little bit of it. I think the important thing when you're finding a game, I mean, you always express a little bit of bafflement that there are certain kids games that are apparently appropriate for adults to play, Rhino Hero, Loop and Chewy, that sort of thing, that are hits. But there are lots of great kids games that aren't necessarily embraced by adults. I think the key is some sort of decision or challenge that is meaningful for an adult. You can have... No,
it's garbage. It's dexterity. That's what it is. It's just a dexterity game. Those are the
dexterity certainly helps. But I mean, like Loop and Chewy have some subtle, you need to have a lot of light touch to do well at that game, to be precise with that game. And it takes some practice to get good at it. So I can see why adults are into it.
Okay, but why then is Kerplunk not popular?
I think there's something there. It's too random.
There are all kinds of kids' dexterity games out there. You can go to Walmart or Target and buy a pile of them, and some of them are just as good as these other adult games. That's what I'm saying. I think sometimes it's I don't know. So what makes a good kids game that's also good for adults? Can the kids compete with the adults? Then I think it's good. That's how I determine it. Can we play on a level playing field? A really good example is Gula Gula.
Yeah,
which is a little game where you're pulling these eggs out of this thing without making a stick fall over, and the kids' fingers are smaller, so they have an advantage over the adults. But the adults can gauge the right egg to pull out.
Right.
So it kind of is pretty even. When I play this with kids, it almost always is an even match, and that's the kind of game I think that's the best.
Memory games are often very good playing against kids because they tend to remember more. And the adults may have better strategy in whatever the game rules are, but the kids are going to remember in specific detail where things are hiding. The adults are going to make more mistakes. Maybe that's just me.
Okay, for other questions, we have Perry. He wants to know, are Monopoly and Life both owned by Hasbro? Yes.
Yes.
So he says, if so, then why isn't Monopoly Life a thing? Put Monopoly on the edge of an adapted Life board. Normalize the currency between the two games. Roll 3 dice, 2d6 and 1d10. Players move 2 pawns through the life pawn before the Monopoly pawn. Players choose to draw from the chance of the community chest cards whenever landing on a life space. And everyone starts off as an entrepreneur with varying personalities. There are other details that I have solutions to, but that's the gist of it.
I think he just explained. He just answered his own question. That's why that hasn't happened.
I could just imagine people's eyes rolling back and they fall over dead from the complications.
If you feel that strongly about it, Perry, I think this is your job. You've got to make this happen. I want to see you at a convention with your prototype board.
And then he also brought up the topic that we have started and will probably be around for the next 20 episodes. What could the Dice Tower do to help people navigate through the myriad of games? So he says, what information does the Dice Tower have that people don't have? Do you have spreadsheets with published games that people can access? Do you have lists of information that tag games according to genre, year, or playtime? Do you have lists of games? Would giving whatever information you possess to the public for the public to download be feasible? I don't think that matters. I don't mean this to be trite, but you can go to Board Game Geek and get a ton of information, but most people aren't going to go and sort it out and figure all that stuff out. And even if I made spreadsheet lists, some people would love that, but for the most part, that would not be very helpful to people. I think that what we do with top 10 lists and best of the year, there's a reason our best of the year videos are easily our most watched videos of the year. Because we're just giving you opinions on what we think are the best, but that helps people narrow it down. We don't really have a lot of secret information most people don't have. I just get my information from the internet like everyone else does, like Board Game Geek, for example.
So are you saying that in Dice Tower headquarters there's not one entire wall filled with string connecting different games and designers together and all sorts of secret information and it's like Homeland but about board games?
Right now Kenny's currently working on our new hard drive. We have how big is it? It is 16 times 3. So 12 times 3. 36 terabyte server / hard drive we got.
Whoa.
Yeah, if someone's listening to this now in the year 2028 and they're like, my phone has that. All right,
those rubes.
For right now in the year 2018, that's a lot of space. And even that is not as much space as we actually want. We actually have 48 terabytes, but we are using 12 of it as a backup. So we have not been saving all our video. We are going to start saving our video. I haven't even been saving all the podcasts because it takes up so much space. But this is going to allow us to do this now. So on that database, we have all our videos and stuff. But no, there's no wall with yarn and nails and things
that we know of. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a secret, right?
Yeah.
So Jesper's been playing Kepler 3042, the solo campaign, and he says it's very, very difficult. I haven't even played this at all, so I don't know what he's talking about. But he says that during setup, you reveal some of the closest planets that you can explore, and sometimes it's pretty clear that it's going to be near impossible to get the necessary points to complete the campaign level. So his question, is it cheating if at that point you reshuffle the planet tiles on the board in hopes of getting a more promising starting layout? I realize that I could just keep doing this until I get the perfect starting layout, and then I might as well just choose the perfect layout. On the other hand, why waste an hour losing a game just so you can say that you did it by the book? Reshuffling the planet tiles could also just be considered giving up and trying again, which begs the question, when playing solo, is it even okay to give up at any point and try again? Well, you're playing solitaire, I would imagine, yeah, right? Unless there's some sort of consequence for losing in your campaign.
I don't know that I would set up to finding the perfect score, but if I'm playing a solitary game and I set everything up and it's like, oh, this is really bad for me, I'm starting over. What do I care?
Right.
I do that with video games too. I'll start Civilization on a computer and I'll be like, what? This starting position's awful. I'm not playing this. I'm starting over. And you know what? I promise you, if you do that, somebody out there is going to go, you're soft. You're pathetic. You know what?
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care. I'm having
You're
fun.
right. It's not worth slogging through for however long a game is going to be if you know it's going to be a horrible experience. Unless you want the challenge. If you're playing hard mode, then go for it. But if you're not up for that, that's your choice. You're the only one playing. So if you're fine with it, it's fine. I'm not going to tell anybody.
Our next question comes from Bob, and he says, what do you do when you love a game but find a rule in it that doesn't make any sense to you? He mentions a few rules, like in Rising Sun, you can commit suicide with some of your seppuku. You can kill your guys off. but then you can still hire Ronin and take a figure hostage. Or in Sam Zombicide, where you can shoot your own people, before hitting zombies. He feels like he wants to play the house rule, but he doesn't like house rules. So what do you do when you have a rule in a game that doesn't make any sense?
I try and explain it. I come up with some justification for it. Like, I would rather come up with some convoluted logic for following the rules the way they're written. And maybe it's silly, but if I can come up with that, it'll make sense to me, and I will remember the rule because of that. But I would rather do that than change the rule.
Oh, yeah. Like in Rising Sun, for example, to me, that's even though the actual, you do these steps in a specific order, I just assume it happens, you hired those Ronin before the battle started. You took hostages before the battle started or whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't have as much of a problem with that. The Zombicide one was more of a problem for me, but I don't necessarily think that's a rule that thematically didn't make any sense. That's just a rule I thought was dumb. So I can just ignore stuff like that. But that happens sometimes. I'll read a rule and I'll be like, what? This is crazy. Is that really a rule? But very rarely is that in a game I love. Usually when I say that, I'm not in love with the game.
Yeah, because there's plenty of games that don't have those sort of logical inconsistencies. Gordon wants to know if we've ever had a whole game ruined because of another player. Gordon's first play of Flick 'em Up was spoiled by a very competitive player who physically assaulted her teammate in celebration when he made a good shot and got in the other team's face when they missed or made a good shot. Gordon says the game couldn't end fast enough and he hasn't played it since because of that association. Maybe it's a good game. Gordon's not willing to find out. I don't know if any game's been...
I like this. Physically assaulted your teammate in celebration.
Yep.
Is that kind of like that episode in Friends where the girl punches Joey? I love you so much, and she's just punching him really hard? Is that what that means?
I don't know.
I like this.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like pretty extreme behavior, and, if you're not...
This is our question for the listeners. Send in your answers, and me and Eric will talk about it. So what do you do when you have a person in there that is ruining a game? Have you ever had a game ruined for you by a player and you've never gone back to that game? Is that fair to the game? Or is that just the way it goes, And if a player does ruin a game for you, or you see that they're ruining a game for somebody else, what do you do in that situation? In this particular situation, it sounds like the person's just raucous.
Yes. And probably just got carried away.
That might not bother me depending on the situation, and it might bother me in other situations.
There was one game where somebody kept assassinating my insurance adjuster, and I haven't played it since, but I can't remember the title.
Yeah, well, you know what? You can just... You're right. You have never gotten over that. How many years has it been now?
I have no idea. I mean, it's probably early 2000s that I played that game.
That's so sad, Eric.
It so probably sad. Is. I freely admit it, but I just can't get over it.
All right. Well, we'll talk about this in more detail, but we want to get your feedback. Send in answers, and if you have good ones, we'll read them on the show. Tell us, has a player ever, ruined a game for you? Give us a reason, tell us about what happened. Tell us how you dealt with it. Tell us maybe a player ruined a game for you, but later you played it and loved the game. And then how do you deal with players like that? Email that to questions@dicetower.com.
And now, another tale of board gaming horror.
Oh my, that's horrific.
Gather round, children. I joined a local gaming group about 2 years ago and always look forward to attending our weekly meetups. We gather at a friend's house on Thursday nights, and I usually show up around 8:30 after helping my wife get the kids to bed. The group often arranges dinner beforehand and gets through a game or two before I arrive. One fateful Thursday evening, after tucking the little ones to sleep, I headed over and sent my usual message to the group, letting them know I was on the way. I sometimes have to wait a bit to join as they finish an earlier game, but it usually works out all right. Pulling off the interstate, I had a strange thought about them missing my message and me walking in at the start of a long, heavy Euro game. then sitting around for hours before getting a chance to play. But that was nonsense. I drove up to the house and hauled in a large bag of games that I looked forward to playing. As I strolled into the game room, I saw a very colorful display of pastel game pieces on a giant map, with large monsters to the side, including a curious-looking spirit monkey. The full complement of 6 players was seated around the board of Rising Sun, and they were forming alliances to start a new round. Oh no, had my worst fears come true? I didn't want to be rude and ask how long they had left to play, so I killed some time with a 2-player game of Ubongo. When my opponent had to leave, I wondered what I could do to pass the time. I took a seat on the couch and mindlessly watched cartoon sing-alongs with a young toddler. As the 1-hour mark passed, I played a few games of Tichu on my phone, but I quickly tired of that and may have even fallen asleep at one point. At the 2-hour mark, the host's wife apologized and asked me to start thinking about what games I might like to play next. I said, "Okay, sure," but in my head I was stewing on how this could have happened and why they were still playing. I told them I was coming. How could they not have known? How much longer could this go on? At the 3-hour mark, I finally heard them wrapping it up. This was finally my chance. They casually packed up the game, debating the finer points of strategy and which alliances had benefited the winner. I kept my cool and watched a few friends leave for the night, as it was now around 11 o'clock. My time to play was running thin. As I turned to the host to make a suggestion for a short game to salvage the night, he picked up his phone, read a few messages, and proudly exclaimed to the group, "Hey, everyone! John is on his way!"
Okay, so to clarify, did they not know he was there?
I guess not. Like he didn't want to disturb them while they were playing, so he just snuck in and said, "I'm not going to bother you guys. I'll let you guys finish." But you're actually not supposed to check your phone while you're gaming, right? So, I mean, did they really do anything wrong?
Oh, man. Yeah. Have you ever gone to a game meetup, Eric, and you got there too late and then didn't have time to play?
I've had a... It hasn't happened often, because, you know, we pretty much have a firm start time, and if you do show up late, you know you're going to have to wait for a game to finish. But usually something ends within an hour or an hour and a half, and you can jump in pretty quickly. It's rare that we have like one game or two long games that someone would have to sit there waiting forever to join in on. But it's happened. I showed up once and had to wait an hour or so before something ended.
All right. Well, you didn't have to wait 3 hours. All right. Speaking
Not
of
3, no.
and 2 and 75.6, let's get to the top 10.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
All right, folks. This is a top 10 list that we haven't actually done that long ago. Eric says it's been 2 years.
Yeah, April 2016 we mentioned this, but it's the beginning of a new series, so why not kick it off with updating this one?
One of the things I want to do with the Dice Tower is make it useful to people who use board games in education. And even if you don't, I still think this is useful because you'll probably be asked these questions, right? And so we're doing a series here. We're going to be talking about Best Games Teach Math today. But in the future, we'll talk about games teach English, history, science, creativity, things like that. And so that's going to be several of the next weeks, but I still think it's interesting. Now, in this particular list, for me, because I want to make the list as useful as possible from my end, I picked games that as of me making this list, you can go buy them.
Okay.
So there are a couple great games for teaching math that are out of print and hard to find, and so I just cut those off my list.
I didn't look, so it's possible that I might have a couple of hard-to-find ones on mine. I don't know. I think most of them are...
I've checked Eric's list, and most of them are easy to get.
Yeah, oh, that's good. That's good. I didn't mess up too much.
No. And I didn't put that restriction on you. I'm just talking about this from our end. So, like, for example, all my games, as far as I can tell, can be gotten on Cool Stuff Inc.'s page.
Cool.
But there are other places you can find them at your local game store and things like that. So,
and I did look at my the list from 2 years ago, and on purpose knocked off a couple of the older ones, just because I wanted to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, and I've been doing that too to some degree. So let's get started here. What do you got for number 10?
Number 10.
My number 10 is Lemonade Stand from Mayday Games. It's about running a lemonade stand. You have to spend money to buy the stuff in order to make lemonade, but then weather is going to affect how much you earn, how many customers you can get. So it is a good game for learning about investing your money, spending money to get materials, and then hopefully getting a return on your investment. It's kind of neat for that purpose. Lemonade Stand, my number 10.
My number 10 is Queen Domino. You know, I actually considered putting King Domino on here, but I think King Domino is maybe a little too simplistic. But Queen Domino, you are trying to score points in various ways over the course of this game by placing these tiles down, domino style, into your grid in front of you, and just figuring out the points and what gives you this and how many points something gives you. That's just some good basic arithmetic skills, and yet the game is simple and also offers a lot of strategy. So I highly recommend Queen Domino.
I had considered King Domino for my list. I haven't played Queen yet.
Number 9.
Number 9 for me is Torres, which is on the advanced end of this scale. If you're talking about young kids, this probably isn't appropriate, but it does use the scoring system where you're building these towers, these structures, these castles, and the score of that castle is how high you are based multiplied by the base of that tower. So you're trying to build large structures and get high up on them, and that product is your score. Do you want to make the tower taller? Do you want to make it longer? Where can you expand that particular structure? And then you're also using action points. So that's pretty simple arithmetic, but you also need to run those calculations in your head. How many points is it going to take me to do what I want to do? Torres, number 9.
My number 9 is at the very opposite extreme of complexity.
Yes.
And that is Quicks. In Quicks, you're just basically rolling dice and writing numbers down on a sheet of paper. We mentioned this earlier in the episode, a roll and write game. But this is a simple one, and you're using a little bit of probability to try to figure out when and where to write each of the numbers. It's really simple, and yet I find it works good, especially with larger groups. So if you have a classroom, you could play Quicks pretty much with the whole class if you wanted to. My number 9, Quicks. That's Qwixx.
Number 8.
I'm pretty sure my number 8 was on my list last time as well. It's the Sid Sackson classic Acquire. It's a stock game. You are spending money to buy stocks and then growing those companies, those hotel chains, to hopefully make that investment pay out. There's stock splitting, there's mergers, and all sorts of math involved in figuring out how much a particular company and a particular stock is worth. It's on the advanced scale. You want this for older players, but it is a good financial game to play with. Acquire, number 8.
Yes, Acquire is also a game I highly recommend. I have another game that I'll talk about briefly later on. My number 8 is Drop It. Now, this one's technically not out as of us speaking, but it's going to be out really soon. So this is a geometric game of sorts where there's this glass frame and you're dropping parallelograms, circles, squares, and triangles in there trying to score points. So there's math in how many points you get. There's also math in the different shapes, the geometric shapes. It's also just simply a lot of fun. But the trying to drop the right shape and seeing how the shapes interact with each other, I'm calling this a math game. Drop it.
Sure.
Number 7.
Number 7 is another currency-heavy game, a lot of investment in resources and auctioning. It's Power Grid. You have to do a lot of currency counting in this game. Do I have enough to buy the resources I need, to get that plant that I want, to make the connections I need, to have enough money at the end to get the tiebreaker and hopefully win the game? A lot of counting and a lot of money. Power Grid, number 7.
Power Grid sure is a mathy game. My number 7 doesn't sound like a math game. It's a racing game called Formula D. Formula D is a game that's pretty much like the Formula 1 racing. And what Formula D does is it uses different sided dice. You have 4-sided die, a 10-sided die, a 6-sided, a 30-sided die, and you have to figure out the right die to use in different situations. Each die has a range of numbers on it. So like One die is, 2 to 4. Another die might be 21 to 30. And so you're looking at how far you want your car to move because you don't want to overshoot curves. Your car will crash. And really, the whole game is just a bunch of math and using probability to figure out how far to move the car around. That's Formula D.
Are there charts of what the probabilities of the different numbers are on those dice? Because I know that some of the values on the dice are duplicated, correct?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the probabilities are, but it's still pretty easy when looking at the dice to figure out what they are.
Yeah. I'm just curious if there's like bell curves out there that show you what those values are.
I'm sure it's findable on the internet.
I'm sure.
Number 6.
Number 6, the classic roll and write game, Tom, Yahtzee. The key in Yahtzee is whether you get that bonus on the upper side versus the lower side of the sheet, and you need to figure out whether taking only 2 twos for your score of 2s can be made up by getting, say, 4 4s later on. And yeah, it's simple math, but it's certainly something you have to sort of keep this running total in your head. Can I get that bonus if I take this lower total for the numerical scores? Yahtzee, lots of adding. Number 6.
And, if you get a chance, if you ever find triple Yahtzee, I think that's even better. Or you can just play triple Yahtzee with regular Yahtzee. That's where essentially you're playing 3 games of Yahtzee at the same time. And it just makes it even more of a wider range of where you can put things. It's a lot of fun. My number 6 is Veggie Garden. Veggie Garden is a simple game from Quick Simple Fun Games where you are placing vegetables in a garden, and they're worth points based on how you put, where they are in the garden. But at the same time, you're collecting these vegetables. So when you pull them off the board, that's probably going to make them worth less points at the end of the game because there's fewer out there to score points. So there's like some positive and negative numbers that you're dealing with here. It's pretty simple, basic arithmetic. But it does come down to how much are these vegetables worth at the end, and it's a lot of fun. Veggie Garden.
Number 5.
Another classic for my number 5, Reiner Knizia's Lost Cities, the 2-player game. You are constantly evaluating the value of the different suits. And every time you start a new suit, a new color, you're automatically at negative 20. And you have to figure out, do I have enough to make up that difference, to make a profit on this expedition? What's my probability of making a profit? If I only have, if I'm only getting to 14, do I think I can make up those extra 6 points and get a profit with the cards that I've seen so far? Constant evaluation about where you're sitting and whether you can make up that difference. Lost Cities, number 5.
My number 5, I almost picked Lost Cities myself, by the way. Very good choice. My number 5 is the one I would pick today over Acquire, and that's Stockpile. Stockpile is a stock market game, very similar. You're watching stocks go up and down. I think it's a little more straightforward, even if it does teach you a little bit of insider trading. I think is involved in this to some degree. Not like Acquire is a morally great game either.
Right.
But Stockpile just works. You're watching these stocks go up and down, especially if you play the advanced game where the different stocks can have different values. But it's not that complex either. It does a really simple way of keeping track of how much everything costs. I really love this game, Stockpile.
Stockpile is an excellent game, another terrific stock game. We could probably do a top 10 of stock games on their own, and Stockpile would definitely.
Yeah, but I can tell you right now, if we did that, Acquire and Stockpile could possibly be my top 2.
There you go.
Number 4.
I would love to talk about my number 4 right now, but I can't, so I'm going to wait, and I think by the time it gets around to me again, the rules will have changed.
All right. My number 4 is a very, very simple game, Sushi Go Party, or just Sushi Go, but Sushi Go Party adds a whole lot to it. Sushi Go, you're just drafting cards. But different cards are going to be worth a number of points. Like, I might need 3 of these to get a certain number of points. Or this is worth points, but multiplied by something else. It's not complex at all. But it could be work with kids. They're collecting sushi, which everyone knows is a delicious, wonderful food. And you're collecting specific number of points. And each of the sets of cards, especially in Sushi Go Party, does this math in different ways. Some of them, you got to have combinations to get math. Some are multiplication. Some are just adding numbers together. Some are, if you get one of a kind, it's worth points, and if you get 2, it's worth nothing. It's a lot of fun, very easy, and you'll have kids adding and subtracting when they least suspect it in Sushi Go Party.
Number 3.
Number 3 is a game all about probability. It's Can't Stop. We've talked about it a lot, trying to get all the way up to the top of those towers and choosing which column to go for, and knowing that it only takes 3 steps to get up to the top of that 2 column, but how often are you going to roll a 2 on those dice of yours? It's a tough decision. It always is. Can't stop. Number 3.
I have never won this game.
And we all know why.
But someday I will, and you'll be sorry. My number 3 is Take It Easy. I'm so pleased that this is back in print. Take It Easy is kind of like a roll and write game. Everyone has a set of tiles that are the same. They have these different numbers on them, these hexagon tiles going in different directions. And one person will randomize theirs, and they'll pull a tile, and they'll tell everyone what tile it is. Everyone finds that same tile, and you put them on your board. And you're trying to put these tiles in rows and columns where every tile in that row or column is the same number. It's not going to be possible to get them all done. But the ones that you do will score you points that you're adding together. So you're trying to figure out the best combinations and how things connect. There's some spatial elements, and there's math elements to it. It's really fun. Take it easy.
Number 2.
My number 2 is a HABA game called Secret Code 13+4. You're working your way through a laser maze at a gallery, like you're like in an art gallery. And each obstacle you run into is some sort of number, and you're going to roll dice, and you can combine them however you want. You can add, subtract, divide, multiply. As long as you can come up with the proper number that you're trying to get past, you're good. But then you're going to have fewer dice to roll for the next number that you run into, and you're trying to be as efficient as possible. But the creativity of using those different operations is the key to Secret Code 13+4. A big hit in my family. Number 2.
Yep, my number 2 is Eric's number 4, and that's Math Flux. Now, Flux is a fairly random game, if you've ever played it, where you are just trying to meet the goals of the game, which are going to be constantly changing and in, flux. Math Flux does the same thing, but adds mathematic rules to the game, which is so excellent because you're saying, how to get to this goal? I might need to add some numbers or subtract them. And there's a variant in it, which you should definitely play with, where you could always use math cards to solve these rules that need to be done. And if you play with that variant, then this is one of the best math games I've ever played, which is why it's my number 2.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I think when this game was explained to me by Kristen Looney, she said that's the vassal rule, that you always, this is a card that you can bring out that says you can use whatever operations, like I just talked about in Secret Code, whatever operations you can come up with the keepers, which are all single-digit numbers, to add, subtract, divide, just put them together as digits to get the numbers that are the goals for this version of Flux. But you can play with that rule in effect from the beginning of the game, which, yes, expands the possibilities a whole bunch. Great selection.
And finally, number 1.
Number 1, Tumbling Dice. A game. This is all about the final totaling, because you're flicking the dice down these platforms, and not only is there a value on the face of the die as it comes to a rest, but it also lands on a multiplier platform. So now that 5 is multiplied by 3, and you got 15 points sitting there. But then somebody bumps it onto the ×4 platform, and now it's 5 times 4, which is even better. And totaling up all those dice at the end to figure out who wins. It's a great exercise for younger students in arithmetic, and a fun dexterity game as well. Tumbling Dice, number 1.
Yeah, maybe I should have put that. I love tumbling dice. But my number 1 for me is a series of games called the Exit Escape Room games, or exit the game. They're basically an escape room in a box. Now, there's a lot of these games out there, and probably any of them could fit in. Unlock, which actually uses mathematics to add numbers and cards together to solve things.
Yep.
But I think Exit uses the most math. There's a lot of puzzles in this game, and sometimes it uses geometric shapes to solve them. Sometimes you're using actual math and there's so many different puzzles and mathematical things in this game where you're trying to solve a mystery and you're doing it together. These are fantastic. Now, you could fit any puzzle room box, I think, in the number 1 slot here, but this would be my number 1 choice at this point in time for teaching math to kids or anyone, really. The Exit series.
I mean, it's a good selection, just not one I even thought of. But it does teach you to look for geometric patterns, to look for numbers, ways to combine them. And in almost any one of the puzzles, there's some element of arithmetic and counting or adding, subtracting, that sort of thing. Side note, I just this past week am caught up on Exit. I've completed all 6 of the currently available in English scenarios. I'm ready for more, and I really, really enjoyed this latest batch.
All right, let's see what the people choice said. All right, so number 10, they said Dominion. I guess that's math. You add up your deck at the end of the game.
Well, yeah, and you're adding up your actions, too. I get +2 actions here, and then this card gives me another +3, which means I have 4 left. Yeah, there's counting.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Number 9 is Can't Stop. Eric mentioned that. Number 8, No Thanks.
Sure.
I guess that's mathematic. You're trying to figure out the probabilities of a card being in a deck, too, and also just adding everything together at the end.
Yep. Positive points versus negative points, how much something is worth to somebody else at any given point. Yeah.
Number 7, Sushi Go. I mentioned that. 6, Magic the Gathering. That's true, right?
Okay, yeah.
So much math in that game. Number 5, Math Flux. I actually did not expect people to put that on the list.
I didn't either, but I guess people are finding this one.
Maybe if you do a search for math, it pops up.
Yeah.
Number 4, Ticket to Ride, because at the end of every game, you have to add a lot of numbers together.
That's true. Yeah.
Number 3, 7 Wonders, same thing.
Yep.
Number 2, Lost Cities. Eric mentioned that. And number 1,
There we go.
Power Grid, excuse me. Well, that's it for math. Now, in our next couple episodes, you might see some craziness coming about, so keep an eye out for that. We will tell you. You'll find out when you listen to these episodes.
Craziness.
But we're going to keep on plugging along. Also, before you guys turn off the show, I do want to plug Dice Tower Con. There's a few, maybe just shy of 200 tickets left or so.
Okay.
The exhibitor room is full, folks. I have the schedule. We're going to be doing some fun things there. We're going to do a live action magical athlete.
This fascinates me.
You're going to get to come and control the magical athletes. I got to buy them shirts for this.
Or hats or something.
I'm very excited about this whole thing.
So, you're talking about like a full size. You're going to have actual humans playing the characters that are then gifted with magical athlete powers.
That is correct. So, and then you get to come up and roll the die, and then they will have to act like they're magical athlete.
You're like months away from this, and you're already giggling.
I am, because I have some ideas. Anyhow, so that's coming up, and there's a lot of fun things there, too. As for the Dice Tower Cruise, we are literally down to like 20 rooms. So, and maybe not even that much, because I don't know. But if you were planning to come on that, that's like a year away.
I know, wow.
It's selling out quickly. So keep those things in mind. Don't forget, you can always vote on that People's Choice Top 10 list by going to Dicetower.com. If you want to watch us on one of our live videos that we do, like Dice Tower Tonight and such, you can always go to Dicetowerlive.com, and that will tell you our upcoming videos. So check that out. Anyway, that's it for this show. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode number 550 was recorded on April 5th, 2018. Mandy and Suzanne join you next week, and in 2 weeks, Tom and Mandy will record from the Gathering of Friends. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Thank you for spreading the word. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with production assistance from Itai Perez, Derek Porter, and Rob Searing. Our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. Excessively hairy examples of fatherhood provided by the Hirsute of Happiness. And hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at CoolStuffInc.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, email us at Dicetower@gmail.com, or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including the Out of Game Podcast, Board Game Design Lab, the D6 Generation, the Family Gamers, Blue Peg, Pink Peg, the Portal Gaming Podcast, Every Night is Game Night, and Board Game Breakfast at Dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming.
Maybe we should have picked like episode 543 to been like the math one.
Ah, yes. Or one that
or 549 would probably have been the best one.
Or that one that's a palindrome.
No, palindrome's not math, though. Like 549, last episode would have been better.
Okay, but sure.
Or 541 would work.
I mean, you can add up numbers in all sorts of ways.
I know, but you can't add 550. Oh, no, it works. 5 minus 5 is 0. Woohoo, math flux.
You won.